made sure that that was perfectly 90 degrees. I just needed my starting point over here. So Dave here, how are you? You may remember a couple of weeks ago I did a video on making this bench. This was the bench top itself. I've expanded on that and I built this skirt for it as well. Stick with me and I'll take you through it. These bench cookies that are part of the legs for the bench, I wanted those to act as also a support for the skirt to push against. This would assist in keeping it at 90 degrees to the top. I put my straight edge over the top and I used a combination square to get the point at the peak of the circle there at 12 o'clock, and then I put a mark at the bottom and I measured out 3/4 of an inch. Now that 3/4 of an inch, I put a mark there and then measured the distance out to the edge of the top, because this was a little bit wider before, and then I ripped it on the table saw to the correct width. So that when this unit, and this is what we've made, which is 3/4 of an inch wide, when it slides back onto the top there, the back is actually touching here. Then I needed to cut this up into 2 different pieces, because it was 8 feet long. I cut it in half basically to 4 feet long each piece. One piece stayed the width. The other piece here I ripped down to around 4 inches wide. Now this is the part that connects to the underside of the top. I needed to create these U-section, like an open slotted hole almost, to go around the legs so that obviously the legs wouldn't foul this going back on. I needed to go all the way back so it was flush with the front. Then I used the domino machine to join this smaller piece to the larger piece, to the skirt. And I joined it so that I would have this side coming all the way up to the underside there, and this side I thought would be stronger if I had the dominoes traveling this way rather than traveling that way in this joint here. Don't pay any attention to those yet. So I joined these together with clamps and then put marks down the back here where I wanted to put dominoes in to lock it together, and dominoed the mortises out and then popped the dominoes in, glued it all up and clamped it, set it at 90 degrees, made sure that that was perfectly 90 degrees, let it dry overnight. Prior to gluing these 2 pieces together, I ran down this piece with the marking gauge, and then I put blue tape on here and also on this side. Now that's to catch any of the squeeze out as you start clamping, because it's a whole lot easier to pull the tape off rather than go down there with a chisel, which the glue has actually bonded to the timber. Very messy. Now I wanted to get this face of this skirt lining up perfectly with the edge of the bench. I didn't want it proud, I didn't want it back from it at all, I wanted it dead on. And the best way that I could think of that was to use the domino again, or rather than domino mortises right the way through the bench top, I created blind dominoes here. So I only went in 15 millimeters. This is a 19 millimeter top, so I went in 15 millimeters, and on this section here, the cutter on the domino I allowed to travel right the way through this piece. And these ones were all a tight fit. So I glued all of these in, and I used a block of timber that was less than 15 millimeters to act as a guide. So I tapped all of these down into the slot to line up with that guide piece of timber. Let it all dry, and then I used a flush cut saw and I went down the inside here and I cut each one of those off, and eventually I sanded it all up. I tidied these up a little bit with a block plane right on the edge to create a little bit of a chamfer so they would guide into the receiving domino mortises on the bench. So it's all lined up. Next thing to do is to drill the holes to take these path dogs. Now this is a tricky part. You'll see I have an intermediate hole here, and there's another one down here. I drilled those using the UJK path guide system and my drill guide. I used a 1-inch Forstner bit to start with, and I went down the depth of that flared section. Now this is from the other side. I'll flip the bench up the right way so you can see it. So just here, that might sit there like that. So just here you'll notice that that hole is a 1-inch hole. The holes either side are 20 millimeters. Went down the depth of the flared section so that the path dog wouldn't be sitting proud at all. I stopped when I was just under the surface, like that. Then the center point of the drill left a little mark, and so from there I continued down using the Path Guide Systems aluminium block. I did have a couple of these path dogs either side, and so that would assist me. Now there are 2 bronze bushes on the Path Guide system. I used one that was the intermediate, and that's the one that's designed to run off the 3mm pins. So I was a little bit tricky there. I mounted the skirt then with the dominoes and all that kind of stuff in there to underneath here, so it lined it up perfectly, and I continued that hole down into here. Now why have I done that? Well, that will also act as a perfect location for that. So these are very tight tolerances, and that is holding it perfectly. Then I put a 5/16 or an 8mm hole in the bottom of that again. So this hole has actually got 3 different diameters. So that now goes into there perfectly and sits around about 1 millimeter below the surface. And I'll turn it over and you can see the other side. You can see it does protrude. And that also acts as another locating pin for the skirt. And it's the clamp that actually holds the skirt up to the underside in conjunction with one of these through the 5/16 hole. That's an 8mm bolt in a fancy festool handle. The next thing I had to do was to create these dog holes here in the best position I could find. Now I wanted to make sure that I was perfectly in line with those dog holes on the bench, that they would come across and transfer and go straight down there, so that I can use this to put dogs in here and down through there and have a piece of timber pushed against those dogs, and it will follow perfectly in line to the edge there. So if I wanted to push a piece of timber against there and create a joint, screw them together or whatever, there's no mucking around. It's a no-brainer. That's where they are, that's where they'll go. But it'll be perfect. So how I did that was I used the Path Guide aluminium block, and you can see already what's going to happen. The path dogs, these little guys, one there and one there. Sit that on there. That's in position. Then I used an engineer square on here against the edge and straight down onto the skirt. How about I put that together and we can have a look. Beautiful. And this one will pull it up nice and tight. Okay. That's all locked together. The thing's assembled. And up. And onto there. Look at that. Isn't that great? All right. How I did this. Where is it? There it is. Okay. Those guys there, the long path dogs will go in. Like so. And there. Okay, it's not going anywhere. And I used an engineering square. And basically that was that. I put a mark on the face and it'll cross on that side, and then I knew then when I use this one, out you come, creating the holes wasn't too hard. How do we find the depth? Well, again, I used this little guy. I sat this when it was apart, took it apart again, and I brought this down to the depth that I wanted it to be. Both ends. Then I used the path sticks, which are the 1 meter stainless steel rules. Then I just did this as I did exactly the same as I did on the top here, I did here. I even used the 3, 4, 5 triangle because I could. The tip of the triangle was down here somewhere, but it didn't matter because the pin was just going through the 2 points at the peak of the triangle on the rules. And then I drilled all these holes first, and it was just a matter of coming back the right distance back to there, and then that gave me that hole and that hole. And then because I had that, then I could flip it over and do from here back down to there, and then back this way, and it was just so easy. Have a look at the video that I did on how to do the path guide system, and it will all make sense. All I did was whatever I did there, I also did down there. I just needed my starting point over here so that I was in line with what I already had. So that's all you need to know about that. All right, now I needed to do the rebate at the top here and the dado here. Now these are 2 millimeters deep by 3/4 of an inch wide. Again, this wasn't on here when I did it. I used the edge fence on the router this time. I didn't set up a straight edge for these two, and it worked quite well. I was very happy with it. Just 2 millimeters straight through. There you go. Once I had done the dados, I put masking tape in the bottom to stop any of the wax, because I wax finished these as well. So that was in there. Then on the other side, I did the bumper as well, just below the height of the feet. And that was, so I can push this back against that unit now. And there's no way I'm gonna move this, because it's got the bench cookies that have got the non-slip feet, and it's also got one long length of cushion material along the back there. Can you see it? See that length of cushion material? And that has been dadoed in as well, 2 millimeters. It's there to save the surface of a kitchen table or a dining room table you sit this on. You're not going to hurt it. And then also you might see another little safety thing I've done is I put rounds on here. Now I've rounded those off because if you're using this inside a home, 9 times out of 10 there's going to be a young child there who's going to get up and see what you're doing, and you don't want them to crack their forehead. You're doing something active, kids are curious, they want to see what's going on. So that's got a very large radius that I cut with the jigsaw. Then I put it over the linisher just to clean it all up, and then I ran a 1/8 round over with the router front and back, tidied it all up. All right, sanded the whole thing then, and I sanded it down to 220 grit. Then I applied the wax, which I always do on these kind of things, and then got the valise or the valise, V-L-I-E-S. People ask me all the time what it is. It's called valise. It's a German word, and it's an aluminium oxide pad. It's around about a 300 grit abrasive, but it builds up the wax in the pad, and it heats up, and it kind of burnishes it, polishes the wax up. I'm very happy with it. Front and back, around the edges, after the wax was done, pulled out the masking tape and then applied the cushion strip, and it's become my new favorite thing. So I think I got a 10-meter roll, and I've still got a little bit left after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 runs at 1.2 meters. These 20 millimeter dogs, these ones are festool, UJK make them. The path dogs, you could use 20 millimeter hardwood dowel if you wanted to. But what I want to show you is I can put these down here wherever I want. They don't need to be locked in at all. I've designed this so that nothing really has to go through except for this area here where the clamps go through. I realize that if this is sitting on top of a cabinet or something like that, you're not going to be able to get them through here down the bottom. These holes down here totally are for the dogs, or for this clamping element here, which I can use to hold things on the face if I wish. These guys down here are for support wherever I want. This row of holes here are for clamping things against there. Now you don't need too much pressure because this cushion strip really does stop things from moving around. I'm going to put a couple of these down here. Put one there, and I'll put one there. And then, now that, the bottom of that is perfectly parallel to the bench top. It's just how it works. It's worthwhile putting these holes in nicely. Then I can clamp it. That's not going anywhere. Now I can do all sorts of things with that at this stage. Now, I did mention, I can put another clamp on the other side if I want to, but I did mention earlier about lining things up. So what I can do is I can put a dog there and a dog there. I can put a piece of board across the top. I can put this up to the underside, line that up, pushing up against those dogs there, lock that. That is flush. It's perfect. I can put this on top of there. I could bring that back if I wanted to about there. Let's say back to there. And then release this. I can slide her up, because I'm pushing against that cushion strip. No, I'm pushing hard against that, okay? It's the same all the way. What do you think of that? That's flush. That's flush. That's all flush. I can hold this down if I want to. And then I can screw through there, or I can, whatever I need to do on a right angle corner, I can create the joint. It's being held. Pocket holes. If I had a Craig pocket hole of some sort, I can then hold it both sides, and now I can put the pocket hole screws in there without any fear of the thing moving around. It's going to stay solid. If you like what I'm doing, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell down there. You will be sent an email to let you know the next time I've done a video, and I've got a few like this in the pipeline, so you may want to do this. Give me a thumbs up if you reckon it's worth it, and keep on coming back. I shall see you next time.